Hello, everybody. I am Teresa Carpenter, and welcome to the third edition of Stories of Service, where I feature ordinary people who are doing extraordinary work. And today I have an amazing guest here today, none other than my beloved cousin, Bryan Johnson. Bryan, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing really well. Thank you so much for taking this opportunity to join me today and have this incredibly important conversation about transformation, finding your path, and just figuring out your life because you've had an extraordinary life and you've touched a lot of people, including myself. So, thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. And I'm honored to have this opportunity. So,
I as
I
well.
wanted to start. Oh, thank you. I wanted to start off just by asking you a little bit of questions about sort of your background, where you grew up, and how you got on the path that you did. Your life took a lot of twists and turns, but I always think it's good to start from the beginning about where you're from and kind of a little bit about your childhood.
Sure. Um, as you know, I was born in Columbus, Ohio, to my mom, Linda, and my dad, David, as I knew then was David Johnson. And it was a pretty normal life, for the first few years. I went to school down there until the second grade. Had a bunch of friends, and life seemed normal and pretty, pretty even keeled. And then we had some, marital problems with my mom and my dad. So, we moved. We did a geographical jump, as they say, to try and maybe think that would, smooth things out. So we moved to Detroit, Michigan in the third grade. And we it was a shock. It was quite the change in lifestyles. I went to a new school, and I just wrote about this on the Facebook page. I went to a school called Hutchinson Elementary School, and it was quite different. I was not well liked for some reason, and it was a difficult turn of events. Finding friends wasn't easy. And for the most part, my friend was my brother Chris. Chris Johnson. He was my buddy. For the most part, it kind of soothed things over. It made it easier because school was so difficult. I'll just touch a little bit. During that third, fourth, and fifth grade, we had a lot of stuff going on. The move from Ohio to Michigan, disturbed myself and my brother. So we had issues going on at home. The separation between my mom and my dad. So there was a lot of, hurt feelings and anger, at home. And then add to that, going to a school where I wasn't well liked. And it was very scary. It was a very scary time. There was, for the most part, I wouldn't go outside. I hid under my desk during recess because it was very difficult to deal with, the kids picking on me. And it was just a cruel time. So it was so I started out at a young age with fear, a lot of that was fear based, and lonely for the most part. So, given that we, for a 3-year period of time, it was difficult. And I kind of got set in that mindset that it wasn't safe. I wasn't safe. And I, kind of withdrew into myself. And, my mom started to recognize that. She started to see that, things weren't that great. So she did what she could, and she put us into a Catholic school, a private school for the sixth grade. And it was amazing. Sixth grade started a change. But it was an external change. It was an external change that I didn't receive well because I had hung on to the last 3 years of that part of my life, and I let it fester and boil. But I did. It did. The change was good. It helped, ease the day-to-day life. But during those 3 years, in the Detroit public school system, there was an experience where, we were going to counseling because there was a lot of stuff going on at home, anger between me and my brothers. But one of my walks, we had to walk to counseling, which was, I don't know, maybe a half a mile away. But on the way there, one time, there was two men in a car that followed me, and I just couldn't get away from them. I couldn't get away from them, and finally they made their move and tried to get me in their car. And it was difficult because of that experience. I was unable to walk down the street for a long time without hiding when I'd see a car coming down the street. So some of these things that had happened to me, were deeply ingrained. There was a lot of fear. So moving into the 6th grade was nice. I met some friends, but I was reluctant to, allow them to be, real close to me.
Sure.
So, we went to 6th grade, but then we only could do private school for 1 year because my mom and dad had separated, and she didn't have the money to keep us there. But we were able to move out of the Detroit area, and we moved to the suburbs. And that was, a good experience too. I made friends. I tried to play on the football team, and do, some normal things. But I couldn't find my niche. I was still scared and lonely and waiting for the axe to drop, all the time. And it was, I was 12 years old when my mom and my dad sat us down to dinner one night and said, we want to talk to you. And so we sat down, and my mom said, we need to tell you that Brent and Bryan, Brent is my older brother, and then there's me. She said, Brent and Bryan, you were adopted by David, which is my younger brother's dad, but we always knew him as dad. And so this was, quite the shock at 12 years old. And my dad kind of sat there silent, not saying much, but my mom said that my dad, had been looking for us and wanted to talk to us that evening on the phone. And being, 12 years old, it was something different. It was, might even have been a little bit exciting at the time. But as I look back, I was so hurt that the man that I knew as my dad didn't say no, didn't say anything. And I kind of wished he had, I wished he had, because shortly after that, he and my mom divorced. And, me and my brother Brent and Chris, we went down to Ohio and met my dad. But let me backtrack just 1 second. I was upset because David, who I knew as my dad for so many years, didn't stand up and say, I don't want this to happen. I felt like he should have fought for us, and he didn't.
Right.
So I held a grudge for a long time. I didn't speak to him for years because I was angry and hurt that, he didn't do more, I thought. So anyway, we went down to Ohio and met my dad, Keith Rose. And I was 12 and Brent was 14. And Chris came down and we all seemed welcome. But from the outset, I was upset. I was hurt because this man had established another family. I have 3 half brothers or step brothers. I'm not sure what they're called, and a sister that are by his new wife. But when I got to his house, I got to see that, they had all these things that I didn't have. I didn't get when I was a kid, and they all seemed happy. Mm-hmm. And it really hurt me deep. I had a paper route, when I was 6 or 7 years old. I had to go on a paper route with my brother Brent, at early in the morning, 4 in the morning before school. And then we did papers after school. We had to work hard. We worked hard for what we had, and we didn't have a lot. But I went down there, and my brothers down there, they had, fiberglass go-karts that looked like real cars. And they just had this happy life. And I was hurt. I was hurt from the whole situation. And I thought that I had been cheated. And I resented them. I resented my dad, resented, his kids. But I put on a good front, and, over the years, we would go down there and visit, and I learned my trade from my dad. I'm a plumber, and I'm a good plumber, by the way. But I owe it to my dad. I owe it to my dad because he taught me that trade, and I can never repay him for that. Hurt feelings aside, I'm thankful for that. I'm very thankful. But so I was back and forth between Ohio during summer school, and, I worked down there for him in the summer, but I still lived in Michigan, and I was still going through some things. In the 9th grade, I went to Ferndale High School, and I met a girl, and, I thought that would fill this void that I had. And it wasn't until years later that I knew that I had this void. But as time went on, I found out that I was trying to fill this void that I had with certain things, that were external and that wouldn't last. But I met Michelle in the 9th grade, and I dated her for a while, and things became, they were a little more serious than they should have been for somebody that was 14 years old, 15 years old. And but I thought I was in love.
Remember
I was in love. Yeah.
I met Michelle. I'm going to turn off the AC real fast. Give me 1 minute. I want to hear you better. Yeah. I just went and turned off the AC. I forgot to do before the call, but I remember Michelle. That was, I remember I was like, I'm going to go turn off the AC, and I didn't. But I remember, that was one of my biggest highlights of coming to visit you was hanging out with you and Michelle. You guys were so good to me. And like you could, honestly, Bryan, you just have no idea how much I admired you guys. All three of you, Brent, Bryan, and Chris. I just, you guys know I idolized you three. Yeah. Like in my mind, you guys were my definition of what it means to be a man. And I'll tell you, I'm married to a really strong, I'm getting emotional now myself, a very strong, alpha male who thinks for himself, acts, the way he knows to act, doesn't care what anyone thinks. And it was a direct result of watching the way you three carried yourselves.
Well, thank you.
You guys showed me what a man is supposed to be and how they're supposed to be. And just so you know, Brent and Chris and of course Shannon are all on the call as well, and they've been putting some comments. But I do remember that. So I just want to throw that out there. That was a really great memory. Was going to visit you and Michelle, because I used to do sleepovers. Remember, I'd come over for like a weekend and I'd hang out with you guys.
I do. I remember.
Mm-hmm.
So like I said, I entered that relationship with Michelle thinking that that was what I needed. That was my life path. And I was neglecting school. I wasn't coming home at night. I was, staying over at her house. And back then the courts called that unruly and incorrigible. My mom was not happy that I was not coming home and I was sneaking out at night. So there was this behavior. There was a behavior that wasn't healthy. So I didn't recognize it then. But I was 15 years old and I thought I was in love. And unfortunately, her mom had some depression issues, so she didn't say much about me being over there all the time. And I ended up moving in there at an early age, and it kind of got me in trouble, bit me in the butt, because my mom knew it was wrong. It wasn't healthy, and I shouldn't, be doing that. So, she reached out to the court system, and one day the cops showed up at Michelle's house, and I don't know if it was fortunate or unfortunate. I had just walked down the street. I knew that they were looking for me, so I parked the car down the street, and we happened to drive right down the street, and we saw all the cops on our porch, and sure enough, the cops were chasing me, and I ended up in Children's Village. And I thought it was unfair. I thought it was unfair because I wasn't doing anything wrong. I wasn't, breaking the law. So I was angry at my mom, for doing that, because I thought this is what I needed. I needed, somebody that loved me, and hopefully I could, move forward in a life with her. So I ended up in Children's Village. I got there about 3:00 in the afternoon, and by 11:00 at night, I was dangling 3 stories from my fingertips, and I escaped from Children's Village. So I was on the run at like 15 years old, and I was running from myself, is what I was doing. And I wasn't looking for myself. I wasn't doing the things that I needed to do to sort things out. I was just running. And I ended up hiding out at Michelle's until I think it was my next birthday. And then, I turned myself in, and the judge said, you're grown now. You can move wherever you want. So I moved in with Michelle, and it wasn't. I thought it was a great relationship at the time, but looking back, there's nothing healthy about a 15 and 16-year-old boy and girl living together and sleeping in the same bed.
And playing adults. I think that's what it was, is I thought you guys were such grown-ups, but really you were just kids that were pretending to be grown-ups.
Yeah, you're right. Her mom would send us to the grocery store. We did all the grocery shopping and the laundry, and it was pretend house. I don't want to go into too many details about Michelle in my life, but there was some things that hurt very deeply. It's my life. So she got pregnant at a very early age, and we lost that baby. And so started my life of drinking. I started drinking at an early age. I went to a party with a couple of friends, Roberto and Jim and Brad and Jason, and I got introduced to beer, and it changed my life. I came out of my shell. I thought that people liked me and respected me. And I couldn't wait till the next party. During this time, when I was with Michelle at 15 years old, I lied about my age, and I got a job at Rialto Cafe. And then as soon as I turned 16, I went to another job, and it's just been job after job after job, work. And, a lot of people see it as not a good thing. I'm very work driven. And I credit it to my mom, because we had chores and we had to get stuff done. And I appreciate it today. I have a healthy respect for getting things done. But I did. I started work at an early age, and after I started making my money, I was able to buy my own beer. So I was making trips across 8 Mile Road to where I could buy beer at underage. But there was some incidences with the law that with drinking. So I tried to run. I bought a truck. It was 1990. I'm sorry. It was 1990, and I got my truck. I was only 18 years old, I believe, and I wasn't responsible. I wasn't paying bills, so I ran. I thought the best place for me to be is in Ohio with my dad. And I went down there, and he didn't hire me right away, so I was just kind of stuck. And so I was drinking down there, and I guess Ford Motor Credit was looking for me, and they called my dad, and he he told them where I was, and they came and got my truck, and I was upset. I was upset that he, he had done that, because right after that, he gave me a job. So I kind of resented him for that too. But I was stuck. I didn't have anywhere to go. So I stayed down there and I worked for him. I worked for him 24/7 on call. And Michelle and I split up. We split up. She met another man up here, and I met my future wife, which is Stephanie. And I thought, again, I'm going to try and fill this void, this hole, that had been swallowing me up most of my life. So I thought, well, maybe, this relationship would, help out, help me feel whole, help me feel wanted and loved. So I entered this relationship with Stephanie, not under the best, pretenses. And I didn't have her best interest at heart. I was just after what made me feel good. And, for that, I'm sorry, because I hurt her. But I was working for my dad and, drinking on the weekends. And, I ended up, I was living with her, and Michelle came back into the picture one weekend. My brother, Chris, thank you, Chris. I know you're watching. Brought Michelle down to Ohio because she wanted to see me. And I ended up spending the weekend with Michelle. Spent the weekend with Michelle. And we talked over the weekend, and, I said, you're in a relationship. I'm in a relationship. This probably isn't, the best thing, because it wasn't working before, and it probably won't work now. And about 6 months later, she called me and said she was pregnant. So I didn't really know what to do. I was in a relationship with Stephanie, and but I was always told by my mom, if you get a girl pregnant, you take care of your responsibilities. So I ended up leaving Stephanie to go back to Michigan, and I moved back in with Michelle. And it got closer and closer to her due date. And, I'm not exactly sure how it went, but I told her that, it could be her, her ex-boyfriend's child. It could be mine. I don't know, but this relationship isn't working. So she decided to go back to her boyfriend, and I went back to Ohio with Stephanie. So, along with the relationship with Stephanie, when I met Stephanie, she had a 3-year-old child named Kirsten. And she was just a beautiful, beautiful girl. And I didn't realize what I had at that time. That little girl loved me, and
But you had so many things from your past that you hadn't been able to resolve. I mean, it's so difficult, and I think a lot of people, even on this call, can relate to that. If you're not able to move past certain things, you can't even see in front of you the opportunity or the joy that you have, and that's the problem with trauma. You had this very adverse childhood experience that went on for about 3 years, and that you were never able to talk to anybody about or really move through. And so what that did is it sort of put you on this trajectory where you started to see the world differently. At least that's what it sounds like. And you couldn't see good. And I hear so much of my own story in yours. And I think other people can relate to that as well, is that you can't see anything beyond your perspective of the way the world is. And even though there's this amazing, beautiful child that needs love, if you don't love yourself, you can't give that to somebody else,
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I thought I gave it my best shot. We moved in together. I was trying to play dad. I can remember we got our another apartment, and I had Kirsten held up in the air to reach hold of the beam on the porch, and she grabbed hold of it, and I kind of let her go to let her hang there, and it was the first time she screamed "Daddy," and it kind of took my breath away. And I didn't follow through and be the man that I should have been. So I continued drinking on the weekends, and we did the best that we could. Well, she did. Stephanie did the best that she could, but it just progressed. I was just drinking on the weekends, but I wouldn't just go and have a beer. I had to get drunk. Otherwise, I didn't feel like I did completed the night. So, but I worked throughout the week. I got a paycheck, and I partied hard on the weekend. Stephanie wanted to have another child. So, she ended up getting pregnant, and, I continued doing the things that I did, and, but I didn't think I was hurting anybody. I would drink, and I would fight. I'd get into bar fights, on the weekends, and, I'd go home bruised up, beat up, and go to work on Monday. And, I thought my duty stopped at paying the bills. I wasn't there emotionally. I can remember on many occasions that Kirsten would fall down and hurt herself, and I would just tell her, "Get up, you're fine. You're tough, shake it off." And all she wanted was a hug. And I couldn't dig deep enough to see what she was going through and relate and be sympathetic. I couldn't be empathetic. I just thought, she'd get over it. And I missed so many opportunities to hold her and tell her I love her. So Stephanie ended up getting pregnant, and life went on. My daughter Savannah was born, and we bounced a couple times from house to house because I couldn't keep up. I wouldn't pay bills until I got a shut-off notice. I can remember Stephanie saying that, we had this bill due. I said, "Well, is it a shut-off notice?" And she'd say, "Well, no." I said, "Well, then it's not due yet." And, but after you rack up so much of that, so it was deteriorating slowly.
Right. Yep.
And I didn't see it. Her family was making, some comments to her and saying that, things were getting a little out of sorts, and maybe somebody should talk to me. And funny thing is, the only one that said anything to me, from her side of the family was her stepmom, Pam. And she was right. She came into the house, and I was laying on the couch, and she thought I was sleeping. And she told Stephanie, she said, "Maybe he should be awake to hear this." I said, "Oh, I'm up. I hear it." I said, "Maybe you should mind your own business." And I'm not so sure that I ever spoke to her again. And I apologize for that, because I was wrong. She had the courage to come into my house and tell me I was wrong, that I wasn't, being a man. But
Right.
because, go ahead.
I was just
Were you
going to
gonna say
say, I agree. No, I was just going to say, I agree. And I think it's really hard to be on that other end and seeing somebody deteriorate and not be able to help them. But
Yeah.
I think that what you're saying, though, and in the way that this played out, I do believe is so relatable. I mean, there are so many people out there who spend so many years in this place, and they don't ever get the help that they needed, and you have. So
Yeah.
I think what I want to do now is kind of go into a little bit about the time that you spent in prison and how did that happen, and where did that go?
Well, I mean, it's right here at this point in the story. I ended up doing a job for a guy, and I thought he was, a good guy. He made a lot of money, and we went to do a job, and he pulled out some cocaine, and I ended up trying it, and that was, the start of my drug addiction. Because if you're an addict, you're always an addict. Doesn't matter what drug you choose. I have an addictive compulsive personality. So no matter what I pick up, I can get addicted to it. So today I don't use anything. But as soon as I tried the cocaine, it was a step up, tenfold from the drinking. It took me to a different place. And then I thought I was, some big kingpin because I was making a lot of money. I had quit working for my dad and started my own business. I was making a lot of money, but I was investing it in cocaine. I did so much cocaine. And along with this, like I said, my relationship got worse. I was staying away from home, and, it just progressed. And in between there, Michelle came back and said that the kid was mine. So I'm going through all kinds of stuff. I'm not being the man that I'm supposed to be. I don't know if this child's mine. So I got more and more involved in cocaine, and then I ended up hurting my sinuses really bad. And the doctor said that if you don't stop, doing the cocaine, you're going to die. And he said, I don't mean years from now. He said, I mean, your sinuses are so bad, it'll happen. So I stopped. I stopped the cocaine, and I thought I was good. I went back to work. I was still, not emotionally healthy, spiritually healthy, that's for sure. But a buddy of mine called me one day, and he introduced me to crack cocaine. And that was the devil. Crack cocaine was the worst thing that ever happened to me. Over the years of drinking and cocaine, it had been many years. But as soon as I started using the crack cocaine, it was over. I smoked up my house. I smoked up my cars, everything I had. I became a liar. I became a cheat. I became a thief. It was horrible. So I ended up doing some things down there. I was selling cocaine, and I didn't know it at the time, but the guys that introduced me to it were being watched by law enforcement, and they watched us for 3 years. And I ended up being indicted on many, many counts of various drug charges, theft, you name it. I had been charged with it. I was sentenced to 11 years in Ohio. But in between all of that, those stints, I had been back and forth to Michigan. So I had committed crimes in Michigan and crimes in Ohio. So they called me an interstate, multi-state offender is what they called me.
Were you scared when you first started going into jail? Was that scary for you? Or were you just at that point where you just didn't care and nothing could touch you and you just wanted to get back out there and do more drugs?
To be honest, I had a couple of buddies that went to prison, and I guess I was just sick because I thought, it's my turn. I'm okay with this. This is probably where I belong. So I entered the Ohio prison system, and I did my time. I did my time down there. Prison is not like the movies are, make it out to be. Sometimes it's worse. Sometimes it's, much different. But, nowhere that anybody should be.
What surprised you the most about going to prison, from what you thought it was, what you saw on TV, to what it really was like?
Well, the biggest thing that I saw that was different is there's so many kids there. There's so many kids, and it's all drug related. I got to see firsthand how horrible addiction is on our kids. It's unbelievable. Mm-hmm. And the violence is perpetrated by the kids in there. It wasn't even the older guys. You would think that the lifers, would be the problem. The lifers don't mess with you unless you mess with them. It's the kids, and it's unexpected. At any given time, the kids were being initiated into gangs, and they were asked to go up and cut somebody's face with a razor blade, just for no reason. So it was a whole different, lifestyle. It was a change, but it gave me a lot of time to think. And unfortunately, while you're in there, there's a lot of people that aren't willing to change, don't want to change. So you're surrounded all the time by this negativity and this hate. So you're not willing to open up and share very readily anyway. So you're just sitting in there stewing on, a lot of guilt and shame for the things that I did in the past. And I had no outlet. There was nothing, positive in there. So I sat there and I let it stew. I talked about that in my Facebook. I became accustomed and comfortable with anger, and shame and bitterness. That's just, what I knew. And
was your day-to-day life in there? That's what you were surrounded by.
Yes.
I said that was what you were surrounded by.
Yes. Yeah. So, I did my time down there, and, there wasn't the only person, I think my brother Chris came and saw me one time with his future wife and daughter. And, it was amazing. It was, oh, it blinked out for a minute.
Yeah. All right, we're back.
Okay. Yeah. So anyway, I ended the time down there with, no positive change. I just thought, maybe I can do better this time. That's all I thought. Maybe I'll do better.
But you hadn't healed, like you hadn't gone to any kind of a therapeutic program, or you hadn't talked to anybody in there, or had any kind of a transformation. It was just, I'm going to get my shit together. I'm just going to right. What do they call it in like a bare knuckle, I think, or something. There's a word for that, but basically it's where you don't have any tools, but you just
no. There's you just hope and a prayer. I was just by the seat of my pants. I thought, well, maybe I can do it this time. But deep down in my mind, I knew I was going to get high again. I knew I was going back out there and get drunk, because this is what I don't understand with a lot of people that are addicted, that are in recovery. I can't tell you that it was all bad. That would be a lie. It would be a lie. I had a couple of good times when I was drinking, but the bad times far outweigh the couple of good times. And now I've come to the realization that I'm an addict and an alcoholic. So it doesn't matter about those good times anymore. But so I got out of prison and I came back to Michigan, and I was staying with my mom, and I, was at home. I was stuck at home. Didn't, technology had surpassed my understanding. I went away before the internet.
Right.
And so my sister, Alicia, so let me tell you, my mom remarried, and I have a brother and sister, Nate and Alicia. So I came to my mom's house, and my sister was showing me this, I think it was called MySpace page. Mm-hmm. And she showed me, I didn't quite understand it. So she showed me my brother Brent's page, and it showed all of his friends. And there was a picture of a girl on there. And I told my sister, I said, I know that girl. I said, how do I talk to her? And my sister set me up a page, and that girl turned out to be Shannon Connolly, better known as Shannon Sander now. But and
she's right there. So you put a comment.
Yeah, she's on there. I think she's watching. Yeah. So
so is Chris, by the way.
Oh, there's Chris.
He basically was talking. There's Chris. If you can see, that's the last comment he had on here. So you have a lot of supportive people watching right now. Brent's on here as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
My friend Bryan, who is very supportive and good dude. So you have a lot of people that are tuned in.
Cool. So anyway, I had known Shannon back in high school, just before I started dating Michelle. I went to a dance at the high school, and Shannon and I danced one time, and so that was it. We talked on the phone a little bit, for a few weeks maybe, and then we went our own separate way. And I'll just say it's because I was afraid to kiss her. I was shy. So yeah. So anyway, I got on the MySpace page and I wrote her, something. I can't remember. I just asked how she was. And she, yeah, I see Shannon down there. So she wrote back. She had kept in contact with my brother Brent over the years. So she knew, what I was going through, a little bit of what I was going through and where I had been. And she wrote back. And we talked for maybe a month or so on the computer back and forth. She was just supportive. That's the way Shannon is. She's, very supportive. She's a good friend, to anybody, And she said that she was going to come up to bring her boys up because she was living in Ohio at the time. And she was coming back up the next month to see her mom. And she said, I'd love to see you. And I said, sure. I had nothing else to do. I was lonely and sitting in mom's basement, trying to figure out internet. And she came up to my mom's house, and my mom was there, and, we had lunch and, watched, TV for a little bit and chatted with my mom. And, then a little later she was going to go. And I told her, I said, I've had a great day. I said, it was very nice of you to come up. And, I said, there's always been something different about you. I said, even back when we were in high school, I said, I thought it was, a little nerdy or back then. That's because I was young and dumb. I said, but, I said, you still have that about you. I said, what is it? And, she was standing in front of me at that time because she was getting ready to leave. And she looked up at me and she said, I'm saved. I'm saved. She said, I have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. And I thought to myself, oh, okay, good for you. And she said, yeah. She said, can I pray for you? I said, yeah, sure. And she grabbed my hands and I said, you're going to do this right now? And she said, yeah, I'm going to do it right now. And she did. She started praying right then. She started praying out loud. And looking back on it, it was the most beautiful thing that anybody ever said. She was praying and she talked about forgiveness and faith and love. And I thought it was nice. At the time, I thought it was very nice of her to do that. And, and she said, I still had some issues going on. And I said, I'm probably going to go away. And she said, yeah. She said, but not before I had the chance to introduce you to Jesus. And, wow. I didn't, not at that time, did anything happen. But I ended up going to prison to do another 11 years in prison for the most part. And, she sent me a Bible. She sent me a Bible.
Bryan, how long was your first stint? Just so that I'm understanding the timeline. How long was the first time you were in prison? And then how long was the okay, so it was a split down the middle exactly. Okay.
Yeah. Wow. Yes. So I did 11 years in Ohio and 11 years in Michigan. But I did have, I was released on a early release thing in Ohio, but I went straight to a drug treatment program and I got booted out of there and went right back to prison. So, so it was 11 years in Ohio, and then I ended up, going back to prison in Michigan. But when I went away, Shannon sent me. Go ahead.
How long were you out for? I'm sorry, I just want to make sure I get the timeline right. How long were you out for?
About 5 months.
Like how long was the break in between? Wow.
About 5 months.
That was it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh wow.
But
okay.
So this, I didn't know it then, but that was the start of my healing process because of what Shannon did for me. She had the courage, just like Stephanie's stepmom had the courage to stand up and say what should have been said. Shannon did that. She stood up and she told me what changed her life, what was working for her. And she introduced me to Jesus. So, I went to prison. Shannon sent me a Bible, and I had told her, I said, I don't read the Bible. I said, I've tried it. I don't understand it. And she said, well, read that one. And the problem was that I had been reading the King James Version, and I didn't understand King Arthur language. these and thous. So the Bible never made sense to me. But she sent me an NIV Bible. And one day, it was about 3 months into my prison sentence. It was February 29th of 2009. I was running. I was running on the prison yard, and I look back on it now. I had an addiction to running, but I was running from myself. I was running so that my past couldn't catch up with me, so I didn't have to think about the future. I just kept running and running and running. And this day, February 29th of 2009, I felt the weight of the world on my shoulders. And I just fell to my knees. And there's guys all around me, hardened criminals. And I sat there and cried on this prison yard. And I cried out to God, and I said, I need your help. I can't do this on my own. I said, I've tried and I've tried and I've tried and I've failed. And I'm going to tell you something. From that day forward, my life has changed. My life has changed. And it's not in just some, sudden, I think that God is real type of thing, because he showed himself to me on several occasions. He showed himself to me. So I went back in after that day and I opened that Bible, and that Bible spoke to me. It came alive. And I finally was able to know that I wasn't alone. I didn't have to do this anymore by myself. And I was on fire. I was on fire from that point on. I was hungry for God. I devoured that Bible in 11 days. I read it from cover to cover in 11 days. Didn't quite understand everything of it, but it was beautiful. And I just kept reading it. And I was looking for people to talk to and share it with. And the only person I had was Shannon via the phone. And thank God that she was my friend, because it cost money to, on her end, to put on the phone to talk to me. But I was looking all over in prison for somebody to talk to. I had been in prison long enough to know that a lot of the guys in the church, and it's not, for me to judge, but at that time, I just thought a lot of them were phony. You go to prison, you want to cry out to God and get back out there and do the same thing. And that's okay. That's their business. But I was looking for the real deal. I wanted to know God, and I wanted somebody to show me and walk with me. And the prison system at that time I lived in a dormitory type setting. There was like 300 guys in a warehouse, building. They were 8-man cubicles. So if you stood up, there were half walls. If you stood up, you can see 300 heads, in this warehouse. So I lived on this side of the hallway in an 8-man cube, and on the other side there was 8 beds, and there was one that was empty. In Michigan, they transfer inmates a lot, so beds come empty and then somebody fills it. Well, on this particular day, I saw a guy coming down the hallway, and he was moving into that bunk, and he was the strangest looking guy. His name was Kevin. I saw him unloading his stuff, and he looked, I knew it was a lifer because of his prison number. It was a 194 number, which means he'd been down a long time. And you usually don't mess with those kind of guys. But I saw him unloading his stuff, and I saw him put a Bible on his bed. And I thought to myself, maybe he's the one I need to talk to. But I quickly decided out that he wasn't the one. But over the next week, it was put upon my heart to talk to this guy. And one day I came home from work, and I was really tired. And I jumped up in my rack, and I put my little eye blinders on so I could go to sleep. And all of a sudden I was wide awake. And I sat up and I took the blinders off. And that man was over there sitting on his bunk. And I looked up and I said, okay. I said, if I'm supposed to go to talk to him, I said, if he gets angry with me, I said, it's your fault. And I walked over across the hallway and I said, excuse me. And he said, what's up? I said, I'm supposed to talk to you. And he said, "Did God send you?" And I said, "Yeah." And he came out in the hallway and he gave me a hug and he said, "I've been waiting for you." He said, "I've been waiting for you." He said, "I was at another prison and God told me I'd be transferred soon. And he said, I had work to do. And he said, I've been waiting for you." And for the next 3 years, he and I walked the prison yard and we talked about God. And we opened Bible studies and we gathered men of like mind. And it was amazing. But one of the first questions I asked him what religion he was. And he said, "Listen here, big head boy." He said, "It ain't about religion, it's about relationship." He said, "Don't ever forget that." And so because of him, because of what Shannon did, and because him walking with me for the next 3 years, I have a good relationship with Jesus today. I have an understanding of, who I am in him. And I knew that, I had a chance. I had a chance now. I had a more than better chance than what I had before. But the addiction had such a strong hold on me that there was still this battle. Could I do it? Could I do it? But after 3 years, I ended up being transferred to another prison. And I went to a program called Kirex, and it was a 4-day walk with God. And we were separated from the rest of the population, and we were just with like 40 volunteers and that were from the outside. And they showed us unconditional love. It was amazing. I to be away from all of that anger and bitterness that was, general population, to being around people that were, we called it, from the streets or in the world. Because when you're in prison, you're not in the world anymore. There's outside, there's the streets and in the world, and here we are locked up. But for 4 days, I felt like I was back in the world. And I felt this love, that had encompassed all of us. And it was pretty amazing. So I went on to, lead Bible studies. I got really heavy into the 12-step program. In between the two, I knew I could do it.
It sounds like you had, a combination of a lot of things that came together to put you on this path that you're on today. And there's so many people who have these same signs and these same things happen, and they don't change the path that they're on. So I think what you've done is so remarkable, because you beat the odds of somebody changing so later in life. I think are very low and almost slim to none. It just, you don't hear about it ever. And so I want to definitely, I hope you give yourself grace for the things that happened in your 30s and in your 40s and with your children, because you did turn it around, and you did have a moment where or not a moment, but an entire epiphany where you saw what had happened and how your life could be different. And I think one of the things that really resonated with me was when you told me it was this, and it was funny because it's not as simple as making a decision. It was sort of you said that to me on the phone before we had this call. It was, as simple as making a choice. But what I'm hearing is that it's so much more than that. It's this confluence of having the right people in your path. It's having God intervening and really speaking to you, and you being receptive enough to listen to it, being ready and going, okay, there's a sign here. And I need to take it. And then you had the person in prison who helped do the programs, Shannon, and you had some signs early on, like you said, the mom of Stephanie, her stepmom, but it was this later on in life where you finally got that. So you're still in prison and you're preparing to get out. Were you nervous at towards the end when you knew that you were going to have to take and put into practice all of these lessons learned in this transformation?
I was, but I'm going to tell you something. At the end, I was, really engrossed in the church, and I had met some really good guys, and one of them is a buddy of mine named Eric. We would walk the yard and talk about the Bible and just life. But he was so much more than just your average guy in prison. He cared. He cared that I was getting out. He cared about what I was feeling, what I was thinking. He asked about those things. And I told him, he said, I was down to like 2 weeks before I was going to go home. And he said, I know you're bothered and you've got some concerns. What's your biggest concern? I said, I don't know how. I said, I have a skill. I'm a plumber and I'm good at it. I said, but I know I have a little bit of money, to get some things going. I said, but I need some drain equipment. I need some sewer machines. And I said, because I don't think, my brother's going to hire me back right now when I get out. And, which rightfully so, part of the path of, recovery is, earning back respect and trust, so I understood that and I was not upset, but I was concerned about how I'd be able to, make a living. And I told him, he said, well, how much is that? And I said, I can probably find it used for $1,000 or so. And he just, we just kind of kept on talking. And the next week I called home and my mom said, do you know a Larry Horak? I said, nope. She said, well, you probably should. I said, why? She said, because he sent you $1,000. I said, Larry Horak. I said, well, I know an Eric Horak. And then she read me the letter. And it was from Eric's dad. And he said, Linda, this is for your son. He said that my son believes in your son, therefore I do. And he said, my son sent me $500 and he said, I want to match it. So I'm putting $500 with it. And here's $1,000 to help your son get those sewer machines. And I went and found him after that phone call. And I said, I thanked him. A lot. I couldn't thank him enough because it eased my mind. He knew that not only was I leaving a recovering person that was going to have some problems, but he helped me to start my life, without all of that stress. He said, you're going to be okay. He said, I believe in you. My dad believes in you. And he said, you believe in Christ. And, it was exciting. It was very exciting. To the day that I was leaving, I couldn't wait. My mom was coming to pick me up. And I just sat there in this waiting area and prayed. I prayed and I said, please don't let me let anybody else down.
Wow. What a story. What a story. But you didn't stay working for yourself as a plumber. You now are back with your brother now, right?
I am. I got home and I got a truck and started doing my own thing. And, thankfully I was living with my mom, so I didn't have a lot of the headaches of bills. Mom said, whatever you can do. And I did. I was working 16-hour days and I developed a client base and a customer base, and I was doing pretty good, but I was killing myself. I was trying to make up for lost years. I was working 16-hour days. And my brother asked me, he said, he told me, he said, I'd love to have you come back to work for me. He said, but I've talked to the rest of the people at the company and, they're just not ready for that right now, because they knew of my history. One of the guys asked my brother, they said, if this guy came in off the street and told you his history and asked you for a job, would you give it to him? And my brother said, no. And he didn't. Mm-hmm. He did not. And I'm not mad about that. He waited. He waited to see what I was going to be about. And I can respect that. But last year when COVID hit, he had some issues with some plumbers leaving, and he called me and he said, He said, I need your help. And I said, okay. And he said, what does that mean? I said, I'll be there. He said, I can't pay you what you're making right now. I said, it doesn't matter, man. It doesn't matter. He said, I told him, I said, you've always been there for me, and I'll be there for you. So it started out, I wanted to make a bunch of money to see where I could get to. And I was making a lot of money. And I took a hell of a pay cut working for my brother. But I'm going to tell you something. I love it. It's the best thing. I belong to a family there. I got my family back. My brothers trust me today. My kids are back in my life. I work an honest day. I get a paycheck. I've got insurance. I pay bills today. And it's all because of the work that I've done and because I believe in Jesus.
I love it. I absolutely love it, Bryan. I think that your story is so transformational and so amazing and so raw. I want to thank you for being so vulnerable. It's such a refreshing sight to see. So many people can't go where you go. And I love you so much. And I think the world of you. I really do.
Thank you. I love you too.
What advice would you give? We're going to probably start wrapping up the call, but I want to end on what advice you would give to somebody who is struggling to turn their lives around, and they're in a bad place and they're seeing the world the way you used to. What kind of things do you tell them?
For starters, I tell them, don't give up. Don't ever give up. Search for help. First, I try to lead them to the Bible. But there's, if it doesn't happen right now, there's other means. Find somebody in a support group, somebody that you can trust, somebody that has been through it. There's some guys at the shop, that have had some issues, and I welcome, the opportunity to share, what I've been through, because there's hope. There's hope. If you want it, you can have it. It doesn't have to be this horrible existence. Once you identify that there's a problem, you can, start down the road to recovery and having a better life. I thought to myself, this is my lot in life. This is what I'm going to be. But it wasn't. It took somebody to step up and say, there's something better. I lost a buddy of mine a couple of months ago to addiction. He worked with me and Brent, and we had to let him go. And I got a text a few weeks later at 6:30 in the morning from his wife that said, Jimmy's dead. Just don't give up. Don't give up. Fight for it.
Right. Yeah, you have to fight for it. You have to fight for it to get past your trauma, because the alternative is just to live angry and upset. You just can't. No.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to do this call. It's been an amazing experience. I'm going to end the broadcast and then it'll switch us back to the green room. And I want to just talk to you one-on-one real quick before we get off the call. But thank you all for watching Stories of Service. Ordinary people, which of course you're not very ordinary, who do extraordinary work, which you do very, very extraordinary work. And I look forward to continuing to have these conversations with people who inspire me, who are my, who I've looked up to. And like I was saying earlier, I've looked up to my cousins all my life. And this was such an honor and such a treasure to be able to do this and to have this broadcast. So thank you so much for participating. And thank you all for watching. And I'll see you guys around soon. Bye.